Watches have been issued for Tropical Storm Idalia. It is Sunday, late afternoon, the 27th of August. I'm NBC 15 Chief Meteorologist Alan Seals. This storm is still pretty close to Cancun, Mexico, off the Yucatan Peninsula. It's barely moving. Winds are just 40 miles an hour. It is currently a rain threat for the Yucatan and also for western Cuba. Computer projections from multiple models show the same general motion, which gives us high confidence that that's likely the path the center is going to take. You have low confidence when the models all go in different directions. But we do know once it starts moving, it is going to head toward the Florida Big Bend. In this case, projections shown as early as 2:30 a.m. on Wednesday or as late as 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday. But those are not the only scenarios, and it's not the only message you should take from this. The other message is once it hits Florida, it's going to Georgia and then South Carolina, especially as a rain threat. Now, those forecast lines don't show the impact, and even this forecast cone does not show the impact, but the forecast cone shows the possible locations of the center of that storm, and it also shows the likely wind speeds. So based on today's latest data, we go into tomorrow by the afternoon, it will be a stronger tropical storm. Overnight, going into Tuesday, it will likely become Hurricane Idalia. And then a stronger hurricane approaching the Florida Big Bend region, the area south of Tallahassee, potentially with winds of 100 miles an hour. Now, you'll see that that forecast cone extends basically from Apalachicola to Tampa Bay. In a perfect forecast, the center would pass right in the middle of that, but the cone tells you we're not always perfect. It could be more northwestward, more southeastward. If it goes more southeastward toward Tampa, landfall would be earlier. And that's based on the alignment of the coast and how the storm would be approaching. So if you are in the Tampa area, you need to watch this carefully. Notice that forecast cone also covers the coastlines of Georgia, South Carolina, and even North Carolina, where you could be dealing with strong tropical storm force winds. So what about those winds? This map shows the probability that a location would experience tropical storm force winds. And you'll notice that darkest streak, that's where it's almost certain to happen, the southeastern Gulf, right off the west coast of Florida. In terms of hurricane force wind, right now the probabilities are low because it's not a hurricane and it's not a strong tropical storm. But when you watch these models update tonight and tomorrow night, you'll see the colors getting brighter and brighter. The main message here is where the center of those highest winds are likely to be, and it's that same location. That's in terms of wind. Now, the watches have been issued, at least for tropical storm and hurricane threats. What you see in pink, that's a hurricane watch, and that means within 48 hours, you could feel hurricane force winds. That goes anywhere from roughly Fort Myers through Tampa, which includes Tampa Bay, all the way up through the Florida Big Bend over to Apalachicola. Hurricane watch, hurricane force winds possible within 48 hours. Now's the time to start planning and pre-planning what you need to do. In yellow, those are tropical storm watches, and the tropical storm watches cover central Florida around Orlando, and they extend southward toward Naples and Fort Myers. And there you have the possibility of wind roughly between 40 and 75 miles an hour. Now tomorrow, there will be warnings issued, and the warnings will pinpoint where those wind speeds are most likely. What you may notice, that the tropical storm watch is only on one side of the hurricane watch. It's not on both sides, and that's based on the rotation, that counterclockwise motion that hurricanes have, which will put higher winds south of the center or east of the center in this case than it will to the west. Those winds, they create storm surge. And right now the highest storm surge could be in places like Tampa Bay. If it takes that track just north of the city, that's the worst scenario for Tampa. Otherwise, north of Tampa, up toward the Big Bend is where you'll get the relatively higher surge. But notice also the coast of Georgia, projected with some amount of storm surge. Now, the watch for storm surge has been issued. It covers the same locations that you see the watch for hurricane force winds or tropical storm force winds. And storm surge is simply wind blowing up against water, which will push it uphill, literally. it'll push it into river basins, into bays. So storm surge is rising water based on wind. It has nothing to do with rainfall. And that's why when those winds blow against the coast, you get the highest storm surge. Now here's your rainfall projection. Easily half a foot. Apalachicola, southward toward Tampa along the coastline. It could be much more than that. And notice the west coast of Florida, very likely to see 3 to 6 inches of rain. The brighter rain colors extend into southeast Georgia and the coastline of South Carolina. So flood threats will be there. Right now, no flood watches issued, but they likely will be. Now, this is just one computer model projection, and this one model shows a landfall close to sunrise on Wednesday of what would be a hurricane. You saw the winds projected earlier, 100 miles an hour. But it's not the only possible scenario. Once it goes inland, though, South Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, as I mentioned, you will have to deal with that system. So that particular landfall location, and to answer the question, no, there is no one model we know right now that is right. And that's why we show you multiple models, and we show you this. If you take that location I showed for landfall in the Florida Big Bend, 3 days away, on average, the error can easily be 115 miles in any direction. In other words, it could be 115 miles south, still in the Gulf. It could be 115 miles northward into South Georgia. It can go far to the east, closer to Tampa. It could go farther to the west. Now, in this particular storm scenario, if there's any shift, right now it seems to be closer to the Florida peninsula rather than toward northwest Florida. It seems to be that case. Also, that 100-mile-an-hour wind projection you saw 3 days out, the average error is basically plus or minus 15 miles an hour. So that means it could be 115 miles an hour, or it could be 85. These are all the uncertainties that exist for any tropical storm or hurricane when it's hundreds of miles away and several days away. The hurricane season, it has become very active all of a sudden. There is still Hurricane Franklin. This system has winds of 100 miles an hour. It's in the open waters of the Atlantic right now, but it's going to take a path west of Bermuda, which means Bermuda is going to get some impact. Likely some storm surge, swells, rip currents, heavy rain. Bermuda may also get something that I didn't mention for Florida, that Florida will likely get, and that is tornadoes. All of those are features that come along with tropical storms and hurricanes. And you'll note the wind speed on Franklin projected to get to 130 miles an hour. Here's another triple digit. This is unofficial for Mobile, Alabama, but 105 degrees earlier today. Yesterday, 106 degrees. That's official. It's an all-time record high for Mobile. Records go back to the 1870s. If you're keeping track, it's been 11 times this month that Mobile has hit 100 degrees or higher. In a typical year, that only happens once. The previous record was 8 times. We've done it 11 times. And also it's been 11 times this year that this month that Mobile has set or tied record highs. Finally, it's coming to an end, at least for now. Temperatures tomorrow, low to mid 90s, still warmer than average, but it beats 105 degrees. We'll start tomorrow fairly quietly, and in the afternoon we're going to get rain that is not from Tropical Storm Idalia. Even on Tuesday, the rain we get will not be from that storm. It'll be in association with the overall weather pattern that is steering the storm. Tomorrow, Monday, like today, a couple of thunderstorms will be strong, maybe severe. So for folks in the NBC 15 area, this is our forecast. We will not foreseeably get a direct impact from Idalia. What we do get, though, is temperatures that are back to almost normal in the middle of the week. And then finally, we get back to those daily showers and thunderstorms, which we desperately need because we are in a drought. Stay updated to later forecasts. I'm NBC 15 Chief Meteorologist Alan Seals.